The canteen on Nexus Station smelled of oil and alien sweat. Zixthor sat at the bar, his massive frame taking up 3 seats. His forearms rested on the counter, each one thick with muscle under chitinous plates that could stop most weapons in the galaxy. He was 8 feet tall when he stood, and right now he was enjoying a drink that would kill most other species. The bartender, a small creature with too many eyes, slid a datapad across the bar. Zixthor picked it up with one hand and read the contract details. His mandibles clicked together in what passed for a smile among his kind. "Human settlement," he rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. 50 individuals, refusing to leave an asteroid. The Vorten Consortium wants them gone. The bartender's eyes blinked in sequence. "Humans, the new species? I heard they are weak." Zixthor laughed, a sound that made the other patrons look away nervously. "Class 3 species. No natural weapons, no armor, soft skin that tears easily. This will be the easiest 500,000 credits I have ever made." He accepted the contract with a press of his claw. The job was simple. Go to the asteroid. Remove the humans. Collect payment. He had done this kind of work 100 times before. 20 years as a mercenary, and he had never failed a contract. Never even come close. At the far end of the cantina, an old Silurian trader watched Zixthor with ancient eyes. The Silurian had been traveling the galaxy for 200 years. He had seen species rise and fall.
He had witnessed wars that rewrote star maps.
And he had recently encountered humans for the first time. The Silurian got up slowly and walked to the bar. His scales were dull with age, but his mind was sharp. "Excuse me," he said to Zixthor. "I could not help but overhear. You are taking a contract against humans?" Zixthor looked down at the old creature. "What concern is it of yours?" "Just a warning, friend. Be careful with humans. I have dealt with them in trade. There is something different about them. Something that does not show up on their classification." Zixthor's mandibles spread wide in amusement. "They are Class 3, what can they do? Bleed on me?" The Silurian shook his head slowly. "I have lived a long time. I have learned to recognize danger in many forms. Physical strength is only one kind. Humans have something else, something in their eyes. Like they are always ready to fight even when they should run." "Then they will die quickly," Zixthor said, turning back to his drink. "Thank you for your concern, old one. But I know my business." The Silurian walked away, shaking his head.
He had tried.
That was all he could do. Some lessons had to be learned the hard way. Across the station in a different section, Zixthor began assembling his team. He called in favors and hired specialists. 6 mercenaries joined him. A Valter tracker who could see in darkness and follow any trail. A Thraxian demolitions expert who loved explosives more than conversation. 2 Kresh warriors, brothers who fought together like one organism. A Varelian tech specialist who could hack any system. And a Grundar heavy weapons expert whose plasma cannon could punch through ship hulls. They met in Zixthor's ship, a lean attack vessel built for assault operations. The team gathered in the briefing room, and Zixthor displayed a hologram of the asteroid and the human settlement. "This is Haven Colony," he told them. 50 humans, miners and their families. They are squatting on an asteroid claimed by the Vorten Consortium. Our job is to remove them, by force if necessary. The Valter tracker leaned forward, studying the hologram. "What kind of weapons do they have?" "Primitive firearms, chemical propellant weapons, mining equipment. Nothing that will penetrate our armor." Zixthor zoomed in on the settlement structure. They have built into the asteroid itself. Tunnels and chambers carved from rock. Standard mining colony layout. One of the Kresh brothers made a growling sound that might have been laughter. "Sounds easy. When do we leave?" "Tomorrow," Zixthor said. 3 days' travel. Then we finish this quickly and collect our payment." What none of them knew was that their target had already received warning. Haven Colony knew someone was coming, and they were preparing. Inside the asteroid, Commander Jacob Pierce stood in the command center, looking at a screen that showed the stars beyond. He was a tall man by human standards, lean and weathered. His hair was starting to show gray at the temples. His eyes were the kind of eyes that had seen too much combat and not enough peace. Kate Morrison entered the room behind him. She was shorter than Jacob, with dark hair tied back and grease on her hands from working on the colony's systems. She had been a pilot in the Earth Defense Force. Now she was an engineer. But she still remembered how to fight. "The word just came through," Kate said. "Someone took the contract. A mercenary named Zixthor. Krellian, 8 feet tall, 4 arms, heavy armor. Never lost a job in 20 years, Jacob did not turn around. How long do we have? 3 days. Maybe 4. Time enough, Jacob said quietly. Alert everyone. Full defensive protocol. I want traps in every corridor. Explosives at every choke point. And make sure the families know where the emergency shelters are. Kate moved to stand beside him. Jacob, we could evacuate. Call for help from Earth, the defense force would come. In 3 weeks, maybe. By then we would be dead or scattered. Jacob finally turned to look at her. Besides, this is our home. We found this asteroid. We filed proper claims. We built everything here with our own hands. I am not running because some corporation hired thugs. Kate nodded slowly. She had expected this answer. She had known Jacob for 10 years, since they served together in the Terran-Kralax War. That war had been brutal. Humanity had been new to the galaxy then, and the Kralax Empire had decided humans were easy prey. The Kralax had been wrong. They won the war, technically, but the cost had been so high that the Kralax Empire never fully recovered. Humans had made victory taste like defeat. I will start setting up the defenses, Kate said. But Jacob, these are not soldiers coming. These are professional killers. They will not play fair. Jacob's expression did not change. Neither will we. Over the next 3 days, Haven Colony transformed. The miners set aside their drills and picked up weapons. The engineers rigged the colony's systems to be weapons themselves. Corridors that once carried air and water now carried death. The hydroponics bay became a kill zone. The reactor room became a fortress. Families were moved to the deepest parts of the mine shafts. Children were taught which tunnels led to escape pods, just in case. Everyone over 16 years old was given a weapon and basic training. No one complained. No one suggested surrender. These were people who had chosen to live on the edge of known space. They were not the type to give up easily. On the evening of the 3rd day, Jacob recorded a message. He sat in the command center alone and spoke to a camera that would send his words back to Earth. Lisa, he said, addressing his daughter who lived on Earth. If you are watching this, then things did not go well here. I want you to know that we did not start this fight. We just wanted to live in peace and build something of our own. But sometimes peace is not an option. Sometimes you have to fight even when the odds are bad. Your mother taught me that. She would be proud of what we are doing here. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Remember what I always told you. Never start a fight. But if someone else starts it, you finish it, no matter what it costs. Because if you do not fight for what is yours, then nothing is really yours. Everything is just borrowed until someone stronger takes it away. Jacob ended the recording and sent it. Then he went to check the defenses one more time. Kate found him in the main corridor inspecting an explosive charge hidden in the wall. They will be here soon, she said. Sensors picked up their ship entering the system. Good, Jacob said, standing up. Let them come. They think we are easy prey. Class 3 species, soft and weak. He looked at Kate and something cold flickered in his eyes. Let us teach them why you should never make humans angry. Kate smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a soldier who knew the fight ahead would be hard but was ready anyway. I will go wake up the others. Time to show these aliens what humans do when you threaten their home. Across the asteroid field, Zixthor's ship approached. The great mercenary sat in his command chair, confident and relaxed. His team was ready. His weapons were charged. This would be over quickly. Just another job. Just another payment. He thought about the old Silurian's warning and laughed. Be careful with humans. What a joke. They were Class 3. They had no natural advantages. They were barely worth the effort. But as his ship drew closer to the asteroid, as he looked at the small colony carved into the rock, Zixthor felt something he had not felt in many years. A tiny whisper of doubt, a small voice in the back of his mind asking a question he did not want to consider. What if the old Silurian was right? Zixthor pushed the thought away and gave the order to begin the assault. His ship moved into position. His team prepared their weapons. And deep inside the asteroid, 50 humans waited in the darkness, ready to show the galaxy exactly what they were capable of when someone made them angry. The war for Haven Colony was about to begin, and neither side knew just how much blood would be spilled before it was over. The assault began in the early hours of the colony's artificial morning cycle. Zixthor's ship docked with the outer airlock like a predator's mouth closing on prey. The mercenaries moved through the breach in practiced formation, their armor gleaming under the emergency lights. The Valter tracker led the way, his enhanced vision cutting through the darkness. Behind him came the Kresh brothers, weapons ready. Zixthor followed, confident in his team's ability to handle anything these soft humans could throw at them. The first corridor was empty. Too empty. Their scans showed no life signs nearby, but the Valter's instincts were screaming warnings. Something was wrong. The air smelled of metal and fear and something else he could not identify. "Stay alert," Zixthor ordered. "They know we are here." The Valter moved forward another 10 meters. The corridor ahead looked clear. He activated his thermal vision, searching for heat signatures. Nothing. He took another step. The explosion of gunfire came from everywhere at once. The walls themselves seemed to erupt in flame and thunder. Bullets tore through the darkness, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. They were not energy weapons. They were old-fashioned chemical firearms, the kind the galaxy had stopped using centuries ago because they were too primitive. But primitive did not mean ineffective. The Valter's shields flickered and died under the assault. His armor designed to deflect energy weapons cracked under the kinetic impacts. He went down hard, his blood mixing with the smoke and cordite in the air. The mercenaries fell back, returning fire blindly. But there was nothing to shoot at. The humans had fired from hidden positions in the walls and then disappeared. By the time Zixthor's team reached cover, the Valter was dead and the corridor was silent again. "Report," Zixthor demanded, his voice tight with anger. "Automated defenses," the Varelian tech specialist said, examining the walls with a scanner. "Hidden gun ports. Motion sensors. They set a trap and we walked right into it." One of the Kresh brothers kicked the wall in frustration. "They killed Tracker with primitive weapons." "How is this possible?" Zixthor stared at the corridor ahead. His intelligence had said the humans had basic weapons, not automated defenses, not ambush tactics. Something was very wrong here. These were not the helpless miners he had been expecting. "Change of plan," he said. "We cut through the hull directly. Bypass their defenses. Hit them where they are not expecting us." The Thraxian demolitions expert grinned, showing too many teeth. "Now we do things my way." They moved back through the airlock and positioned themselves against the colony's outer hull. The Thraxian placed shaped charges in a careful pattern. Everyone moved to safe positions. The explosives detonated with a muffled thump, and a section of hull peeled away like skin. The mercenaries poured through the breach into what their maps said was the hydroponics bay. Plants grew in neat rows under artificial lights. The air was thick with moisture and the smell of growing things. It seemed peaceful, empty. Kate Morrison stepped out from behind a grow tank, a modified mining laser in her hands. She did not hesitate. She did not warn them. She just fired. The beam caught the Thraxian in the chest, burning through his armor like paper. He screamed and fell. The other mercenaries scattered, trying to find cover among the plants. But Kate was already moving, her laser cutting through the supports of an overhead water tank. 3,000 gallons of water crashed down on two of the mercenaries, sweeping them off their feet. Before they could recover, the floor beneath them exploded. Kate had rigged the drainage system with explosives. The blast tore through the floor, and the two mercenaries fell into the level below, into darkness and waiting guns. Zixthor fired at Kate, but she was already gone, disappearing into the maze of grow tanks and irrigation pipes. He heard gunfire from below, screams, then silence. "How many did we lose?" he demanded. The Varelian checked his scanner. 3 down in the bay, 2 separated on the lower level. "I am not reading their life signs anymore. 5 mercenaries, dead or missing in less than 30 minutes. Zixthor felt something he had not felt in decades. Not fear exactly, but uncertainty. These humans were not fighting like civilians defending their homes. They were fighting like trained soldiers who had done this before. "Where are the families?" one of the Kresh brothers asked. "The children? We have seen only armed fighters." Zixthor realized the truth. The humans had evacuated their non-combatants. This was not a raid on a civilian settlement. This was a military engagement. Someone should have told him that in the briefing. Someone should have warned him. The Silurian's words echoed in his memory. "Be careful with humans. There is something different about them." A voice crackled over the colony's intercom system. "Male, calm, deadly calm. Attention, mercenaries. This is Commander Jacob Pierce. You have entered human territory illegally. You have killed our people. You were warned to leave and you did not listen. So now we defend ourselves. I am giving you one chance to withdraw. Take your dead and go. If you continue, we will kill every single one of you. This is not a threat. This is a promise. Zixthor grabbed a communication panel and responded. I am Zixthor of the Krellian clans. I have a contract to remove you from this asteroid. I have never failed a contract. Surrender now and I will make your deaths quick. There was a pause. Then Jacob's voice came back, and there was something in it that made Zixthor's skin crawl. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was certainty. Then you should have picked an easier contract, because we are not leaving. This is our home. And we will burn this entire asteroid into slag before we let you take it. The comm went dead. Zixthor stood in the ruined hydroponics bay, surrounded by his remaining team, and made a decision. They would continue. He had his pride. He had his reputation. Retreat was not an option. We move forward, he ordered. Weapons free. Kill anything that moves. They advanced deeper into the colony, and every meter was a battle. The humans had turned their home into a fortress. Doors that should have opened normally were welded shut or rigged with explosives. Corridors that should have been straight were collapsed into rubble that had to be cleared by hand. Every turn could hide an ambush. Every shadow could conceal a trap. In one corridor, they found a young human male waiting for them. He was barely adult by human standards, maybe 20 years old. He held a simple chemical pistol and stood in the center of the passage, blocking their way. Move or die, Zixthor told him. The young human smiled. His name was Chris Baker, though Zixthor did not know that. Chris had been a miner. He had come to the asteroid to make a better life. He had found friends here, family, purpose. You first, Chris said, and raised his pistol. The Kresh brother to Zixthor's left fired. His energy weapon burned through Chris's chest. The young human fell. But as he fell, his hand squeezed a detonator. The corridor exploded. Chris had been wearing a vest packed with plasma cutter fuel cells. The blast tore through the passage, catching the Kresh brother who had shot him and the Grundar heavy weapons expert. When the smoke cleared, 3 bodies lay in the rubble. 1 human, 2 mercenaries. The surviving Kresh brother stared at his sibling's body and made a sound that was part rage, part grief. He killed himself, just to take us with him. What kind of species does this? Zixthor had no answer. He was beginning to understand what the Silurian had tried to tell him. Humans did not fight with strength or speed. They fought with something else. Something that made them more dangerous than any natural weapons could. They fought with absolute refusal to lose, even when losing was the smart choice. Even when surrender would save their lives. Humans seemed to have no survival instinct that said retreat, only one that said fight no matter the cost. By the time they reached the main processing center, Zixthor had lost 6 of his 10 mercenaries. The humans had lost more, maybe 15 or 20. But the humans did not seem to care about losses. Every colonist fought like they were willing to die. Like dying while taking enemies with them was actually a victory. In the processing center, they found more resistance. A woman with gray hair fired at them from behind a barricade of equipment. She hit the Varelian tech specialist in the throat, and he went down choking on his own blood. The remaining Kresh brother charged her position. Roaring his grief and anger, she shot him twice before he reached her, but he was too strong, too angry to stop. He killed her with his bare hands, but when he turned around, 3 more humans had appeared, drawn by the noise. They shot him down, their primitive bullets punching through his armor, because armor only worked if you did not have holes in it already. Zix. Thor was alone now except for 2 remaining mercenaries he had not brought into the colony. He stood among the bodies, human and alien mixed together, and felt the weight of reality crushing down on him. He had lost. Not officially, not yet, but he could see how this ended. More fighting, more dying. Even if he won, even if he killed every last human, the cost would be too high. His reputation would be destroyed. Other mercenaries would know that Zixthor the Undefeated had barely survived a contract against Class 3 prey animals. His communicator chirped. It was one of his remaining team members still on the ship. Commander, sensors show human military vessels entering the system. Earth Defense Force, they will be here in 3 days. Jacob Pierce sat in what remained of the command center. A medical kit opened beside him. His left arm was bandaged where shrapnel had torn through his suit. His ribs ached from being thrown against a wall during the last explosion. But he was alive, and so were most of his people. Kate Morrison limped into the room, her own wounds freshly treated. She had burns on her hands from the mining laser overheating, and a deep cut across her forehead that would leave a scar, but her eyes were bright with something that might have been joy, or might have been the madness that comes from surviving impossible things. "They are gone," she said, dropping into a chair. "Sensors confirm it. Zixthor's ship just jumped out of the system." Jacob nodded slowly. He had expected this, but part of him had not quite believed it would work. "Casualties?" Kate's expression darkened. 23 dead. 12 wounded. Chris Baker, Linda Hayes, Paul Martinez, all gone. The hydroponics bay is destroyed. The processing center is half collapsed. "It will take months to repair everything, but we won," Jacob said quietly. "Did we?" Kate asked. 23 people dead, Jacob. 23 funerals to hold. 23 families to notify back on Earth. Was it worth it? Jacob was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up, wincing at the pain in his ribs, and walked to the observation window. Outside, the stars burned cold and eternal. "Yes," he said finally. "Because if we had not fought, if we had just run away, then what? The Vorton Consortium takes this asteroid. Next month, they take another colony. Then another. Where does it end, Kate? When do we say enough?" Kate joined him at the window. "I know. I just hate the cost." "So do I," Jacob admitted. "Every single one of them. I knew Chris since he was 18. I taught Linda how to use that rifle she died with. Paul used to tell jokes that were so bad they were funny. I remember all of them, and I will carry their deaths for the rest of my life." He turned to look at her. "But that is the price of freedom, Kate, real freedom. Not the kind that is given to you. The kind you have to take and defend. Earth is safe because of us. Other colonies will be safer because we showed the galaxy that humans do not break easily." Meanwhile, across the galaxy on Nexus Station, word was spreading. Mercenaries gathered in the cantina, talking in low voices about Zixthor's failed contract. The great Krellian warrior had returned with only 2 of his team alive. The rest had died fighting humans. Class 3 humans. Prey animals with no natural weapons. Some mercenaries laughed. They said Zixthor had grown soft, that he had lost his edge. But others were not laughing. They were listening to the details, learning about automated defenses, suicide attacks, and humans who fought like demons when their homes were threatened. The old Silurian trader sat in his usual corner, watching and listening. He had tried to warn Zixthor. Now the lesson had been learned the hard way. He wondered how long it would take for the rest of the galaxy to understand what he had learned through trade and observation. Humans were different. Not physically, but in their minds. In their souls, if such things existed. They had a quality that most species lacked. They could hate with perfect clarity. They could fight with perfect focus. And they could sacrifice themselves with perfect willingness if it meant taking the enemy down with them. Zixthor himself sat alone in his quarters on his ship, staring at nothing. His armor was scorched and dented. His body ached from wounds that would take weeks to heal. But the worst pain was the one inside his mind. The pain of knowing he had failed. The pain of knowing he had been wrong. He had always believed that strength was everything, that physical power determined who won and who lost. But the humans had proven him wrong. They had been weaker in every measurable way. Yet they had won because they refused to accept any other outcome. A message came through on his communication system. It was from a potential client, offering a new contract, another human settlement, another group that needed to be removed. The pay was even higher this time, triple the usual rate because word had gotten out about Zixthor's failure. The client wanted to know if the great mercenary was still capable of doing his job. Zixthor stared at the contract details for a long time. Part of him wanted to accept, to prove that his failure had been a fluke, to restore his reputation, to show the galaxy that he was still Zixthor the undefeated. But another part of him, a part that had grown louder since Haven Colony, was screaming warnings. That part remembered Chris Baker's smile just before he detonated himself. It remembered the calm certainty in Jacob Pierce's voice. It remembered Kate Morrison's cold efficiency with weapons. It remembered humans fighting not to win but to make sure the enemy lost, even if it cost everything. Zixthor declined the contract. He sent a message back saying he was unavailable for the next several months. But what he really meant was that he would never accept a contract against humans again. Never. Not for any amount of money, not for any reason, because he had learned something at Haven Colony that no amount of training or experience could have taught him. He had learned that some prey was too dangerous to hunt, not because they were strong, but because they simply refused to be prey at all. On Haven Colony, the survivors began the long work of rebuilding. They cleared rubble. They repaired systems. They said goodbye to their dead in simple ceremonies that humans had used for thousands of years. Each person who had died fighting was remembered not as a victim, but as a defender, as someone who had stood up when it mattered. Jacob stood in the makeshift cemetery they had created in one of the deeper chambers. 23 graves marked with simple stones. He had come here alone, needing time to think, to remember, to carry the weight of command that meant he had ordered these people to fight, knowing some would die. Kate found him there an hour later. She did not say anything. She just stood beside him, sharing the silence. Finally, Jacob spoke. During the Terran Kralax War, he said, I learned something about humanity. We are not the strongest species. We are not the smartest. We are not the fastest or the most advanced. But we have one thing that most other species do not have. We have stubbornness. Spite, maybe. When someone pushes us, we push back harder. When someone tells us we cannot do something, we do it anyway just to prove them wrong. He gestured to the graves. These people died because they were stubborn, because they refused to be pushed off their own land, because they would rather fight and die than run and live as refugees. Is that smart? Probably not. Is it logical? Definitely not. But it is human. And maybe that is enough. Kate nodded. The Earth Defense Force will be here tomorrow. They are bringing supplies and reinforcements. The government is formally recognizing our claim to the asteroid. The Vortown Consortium has backed off completely. We won more than just this battle, Jacob. We won recognition that humans will not be pushed around. Good, Jacob said. Maybe the next colony will not have to fight. Maybe word will spread that it is easier to leave humans alone than to fight them. Maybe we bought peace for others with what we did here. Or maybe, Kate said, we just painted a target on humanity's back, made every mercenary and warlord in the galaxy want to test themselves against the species that beat Zixthor. Jacob smiled, but it was a tired smile. Then they will learn the same lesson he did. You can beat humans. You can kill humans, but you cannot break humans. And trying will cost you more than you ever wanted to pay. Across the galaxy, in bars and meeting places, on ships and stations, a new story was being told. The story of Zixthor and Haven Colony. The story of how the greatest mercenary in the galaxy had been beaten by Class 3 prey animals. The story of humans who refused to lose. Some listeners dismissed it as exaggeration. Others were fascinated. A few were frightened, though they would not admit it. But all of them remembered the story. And when contracts against human settlements came up, more and more mercenaries found reasons to decline them. The old Silurian trader began collecting these stories. He had a feeling they were important, that they marked something significant in galactic history. The moment when a new species announced itself not through military conquest or diplomatic genius, but through sheer bloody-minded refusal to be conquered. He had lived long enough to see many species rise to prominence. The Krellians through strength, the Silurians through trade, the Vrax through technology. Each species had their own path to power and recognition. Humans were finding their path too, and it was paved with the bodies of those who had underestimated them, who had thought Class 3 meant weak, who had made the fatal mistake of making humans angry and then discovering that angry humans were the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Not because of what they could do, but because of what they were willing to do, willing to sacrifice, willing to fight, willing to die, but only if they could make sure the enemy paid for every drop of blood spilled. The Silurian finished his drink and ordered another. He had a feeling that the story of humanity was just beginning, and it was going to be very, very interesting to watch, as long as he was careful not to make them angry himself, because if there was one lesson to be learned from Zixthor's failure, it was this simple truth that the galaxy was slowly beginning to understand. You could fight humans, you might even win, but you would regret it, every single time, and that made them more dangerous than any species. 3 months after the Battle of Haven Colony, the Earth Defense Force ship arrived carrying not just supplies, but also officials from Earth's colonial administration. They came to formally recognize Haven Colony's claim and to investigate what had happened. They also came to understand why a simple mining settlement had been able to defeat professional mercenaries. Captain Sarah Blake led the investigation team. She was a career military officer, tall and sharp-eyed with the kind of presence that made people stand straighter when she entered a room. She had read the reports, but reports could not capture what she saw when she walked through Haven Colony's scarred corridors. Bullet holes in the walls, blast marks from explosions, entire sections still sealed off because they were too damaged to repair yet. And everywhere the signs of desperate, clever fighting, traps that had been sprung, defensive positions that had been held, evidence of a battle that should never have been won by the defenders. She met with Jacob Pierce in the rebuilt command center. Jacob looked older than his file photo, worn down by months of stress and grief, but his eyes were still sharp, still alert, still the eyes of a soldier who had seen combat and survived. "Commander Pierce," Sarah said, sitting across from him, "I have read your after-action report. I have reviewed the security footage. I've spoken with your survivors. I have one question: how?" Jacob smiled slightly. "How did we win?" "How did you survive?" Zix Thor is considered one of the best mercenaries in the galaxy. His team included specialists from 6 different species, all of them experienced killers. You were miners and engineers, civilian settlers. By every calculation, you should have been wiped out in the first hour. Jacob leaned back in his chair. "Have you ever heard of the Terran Kralix War, Captain?" Sarah nodded. "Before my time, but yes, 20 years ago. Humanity's first major conflict with a galactic power. We lost. Technically," Jacob said. "We lost in the sense that we signed a peace treaty and gave up some territory. But the Kralix Empire never recovered from that war. They won, but it broke them. Want to know why?" He did not wait for her to answer. "Because we made them pay for every meter of space. Every planet they took cost them ships, soldiers, time, resources. We could not beat them in direct combat. They were stronger, better armed, more experienced. But we could make victory so expensive that it felt like defeat. That is what Kate and I learned during that war. How to fight when you cannot win. How to make the enemy regret starting the fight in the first place." Kate Morrison entered the room, carrying a tray with coffee. She set it down and joined the conversation without being invited. That was Kate's way, and Sarah did not object. "We knew we could not beat Zix Thor in a fair fight," Kate said. "So we did not fight fair. We used every advantage we had. Knowledge of the terrain, willingness to sacrifice, creativity, and the one thing humans have that most other species do not seem to have in the same way." "What is that?" Sarah asked. Kate smiled grimly. "Spite, pure stubborn spite. We were angry that someone thought they could just walk in and take what we had built. We were angry that the Vortan Consortium thought they could hire thugs to remove us. And when humans get angry, really angry, we stop thinking about survival. We start thinking about revenge. About making the other side hurt as much as we are hurting. About proving that we matter, even if proving it costs us everything." Sarah was quiet for a moment, processing this. "That sounds like a recipe for getting killed." "It is," Jacob agreed. 23 people died here. 23 good people who could have lived if we had just evacuated. But if we had run, what would that have taught the galaxy? That humans can be pushed around? That our claims do not matter? That we are Class 3 and therefore beneath consideration? He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "We sent a different message instead. We taught the galaxy that humans fight for what is theirs. That attacking us costs blood and money and reputation. That we would rather die standing than live on our knees. And you know what? That message is spreading. The Vortan Consortium dropped their claim immediately after the battle. Other corporations are reviewing their policies about human colonies. Mercenaries are declining contracts against human targets." Sarah looked at Kate. "Do you agree with this? With the cost?" Kate took a long time to answer. "I knew Chris Baker, the kid who blew himself up to take 2 mercenaries with him. He was 22 years old. He came out here because he wanted adventure, wanted to build something with his own hands. He should have lived for another 80 years. Had a family, grown old, died in bed surrounded by grandchildren." Her voice cracked slightly. "Do I agree with the cost? No, I hate the cost. I hate that he is dead. But do I agree with the choice we made? Yes, because Chris chose to fight. So did Linda and Paul and all the others. They could have run. We gave them that option. But they stayed because this was their home. and they were not going to let anyone take it from them. Sarah finished her coffee and stood. The colonial administration sent me here to determine if Haven Colony should remain active or be evacuated as too dangerous. They were concerned that the battle would attract more mercenaries, more violence, that this colony would become a target. Jacob and Kate both tensed, waiting for the verdict. I am going to recommend that Haven Colony not only remain active, but that it be reinforced, Sarah said. Earth needs colonies like this, places where people are willing to fight for what they build. The galaxy needs to see that humans are not soft, that we do not run, that attacking us has consequences. She looked at Jacob directly. You and Kate will be offered commissions in the Colonial Defense Force. Your tactics here will be studied and taught to other colonies. What you did here matters, Commander. It matters more than you know. After Captain Blake left, Jacob and Kate sat in silence for a while. Finally, Kate spoke. Do you think it was worth it, really? Jacob did not answer immediately. He thought about Chris Baker's smile, Linda Hayes' determination, Paul Martinez's bad jokes, all the people who had died fighting for a chunk of rock in space that most people back on Earth would never even hear about. I think, he said slowly, that we did what humans have always done. We fought for our home. We proved that we could not be pushed around. We showed the galaxy who we are. Was it worth 23 lives? I do not know. I do not think I will ever know. But I know that if we had not fought, if we had not proven that humans will defend what is theirs, then eventually someone would take everything from us, and that would cost a lot more than 23 lives in the long run. Meanwhile, halfway across the galaxy, Zixthor was learning that his decision to retreat had consequences he had not anticipated. Word of his failure had spread farther than he expected. Contract offers were drying up. Other mercenaries whispered when he passed. Some mocked him openly. Others avoided him, as if failure was contagious. But there was a second story spreading alongside the mockery. A story that painted Zixthor not as a failure, but as smart, as someone who had recognized a threat that others did not see, as someone who had survived an encounter with humans when others would have died. The old Silurian trader found Zixthor in a bar on a backwater station, drinking alone. The Silurian sat down without being invited and ordered his own drink. I warned you, the Silurian said simply. Zixthor did not look at him. You did? I should have listened. What will you do now? Zixthor was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I have been a mercenary for 20 years. I have fought in 100 battles. I have killed more beings than I can count. I thought I understood war, thought I understood combat. But the humans taught me something I did not know. What is that? That there are things worse than losing. I lost my team. I lost my reputation. I lost the contract. But I am alive. The humans won, but they lost 23 people doing it. Some of them died in ways I will see in my nightmares for the rest of my life. They won, but the cost was terrible. That is what makes them dangerous. They are willing to pay that cost. Every single time. No hesitation. No regret, the Silurian nodded. I have been trading in this galaxy for 2 centuries. I have seen many species. Most fight for logical reasons. Territory, resources, survival. Humans fight for those things too, but they also fight for something else. For pride. For principles. For the simple fact that someone told them no and they refused to accept it. How do you fight something like that? Zixthor asked. The Silurian smiled. You do not. You leave them alone. You make deals with them, trade with them, maybe even befriend them. But you never ever make them angry. Because once they are angry, there is no reasoning with them. No negotiating. Only fighting until one side cannot fight anymore. Zixthor finished his drink and stood. I am going to spread that message. To every mercenary I know, to every warlord and corporation that hires us, stay away from humans. The money is not worth it. The reputation is not worth it. Nothing is worth fighting an enemy that will burn everything down just to prove they cannot be beaten. That is wise, the Silurian said. And who knows? Maybe you will start a new career, teaching others what you learned at such a high cost. Zixthor looked at the old trader with something that might have been respect. Maybe I will. Maybe the lesson I learned at Haven Colony is... 1 year after the Battle of Haven Colony, Nexus Station had changed in subtle ways. The cantina still smelled of oil and alien sweat. The bartender still served drinks that could kill most species. But the conversations were different now. When mercenaries gathered to talk about contracts, one topic came up more often than any other: humans. The old Silurian trader sat in his usual corner listening and watching. He had lived long enough to recognize historical moments when they happened. This was one of them. The galaxy was learning about humanity, and the lessons were being taught in blood and broken contracts. A young Kresh warrior entered the cantina, his armor gleaming and new. He was fresh from his homeworld, eager to make a name for himself. He approached the bar and ordered a drink, then noticed a contract posting on the digital board. His eyes lit up when he saw the payment amount: triple the standard rate for a simple colony removal job. That one has been up for months, the bartender said, noticing the Kresh's interest. No one will take it. Why not? The pay is excellent. The bartender's many eyes blinked in sequence. Because it is against humans. And after what happened to Zixthor, no one wants to fight humans anymore. The Kresh warrior laughed. Zixthor got old and soft. I am young and strong. Humans are class 3. I can handle them. The old Silurian stood up slowly and walked over to the young warrior. May I offer some advice, youngster? The Kresh looked down at the ancient trader with barely concealed contempt. What could an old merchant possibly teach me about combat? Survival, the Silurian said simply. I have lived 200 years by knowing which fights to avoid. And I'm telling you now, avoid humans, especially angry humans. They are weak, the Kresh insisted. Class 3, no natural weapons. I have claws and armor and strength. What do they have? The Silurian smiled sadly. They have something far more dangerous than claws or armor. They have the refusal to lose. I have traded with humans. I have watched them build colonies on worlds that should kill them. I have seen them survive situations that would destroy other species. And I have learned something important. Physical strength is not the only kind of strength that matters. The Kresh warrior shook his head. You are a coward, old one. Hiding your fear behind philosophy. He turned to the bartender. I accept the contract. Transfer the details to my ship. The Silurian walked back to his corner, shaking his head. Some lessons could not be taught. They had to be learned through experience. He wondered if the young Kresh would survive to learn his lesson, or if he would end up like so many of Zixthor's team. Dead on some asteroid, killed by prey animals that refused to be prey. Across the station, in a private room, Zixthor met with a client. Not for a combat contract this time, but for consultation. The client was a Varelian corporate executive who wanted advice on dealing with human colonies. We have mineral rights on an asteroid, the executive explained. But there is a human settlement there. Small, maybe 30 people. We want them removed. But after what happened with the Vortan Consortium, we are being careful. We need to know the best approach. Zixthor leaned back in his chair, his massive frame making the furniture creak. The best approach is to not fight them at all. Buy them out. Offer them money to relocate, make it worth their while to leave peacefully. That would cost millions, the executive protested. Fighting them would cost more, Zixthor said flatly. I lost 6 team members at Haven Colony, 6 of the best mercenaries in the galaxy. I spent more in medical costs and equipment replacement than the entire contract was worth. And I failed. The humans won. The Vortan Consortium lost their claim and their reputation. So trust me when I say that paying humans to leave peacefully is cheaper than trying to force them. The executive was quiet for a moment.
Are they really that dangerous?
Humans are classified as Class 3. Zixthor's mandibles clicked together in what might have been a laugh or might have been a warning. Classifications measure physical capabilities. Strength, speed, natural weapons, armor. By those measures, humans are weak. But classifications do not measure will. Determination. The ability to keep fighting even when defeat is certain. The willingness to die just to make sure you die too. He leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. I watched a human, barely more than a child, detonate himself just to kill 2 of my team. I watched civilians with mining equipment fight like trained soldiers. I watched a woman with burns covering half her body continue shooting until she physically could not hold a weapon anymore. That is what makes humans dangerous, not their strength. Their refusal to quit. The executive left looking thoughtful. Zixthor knew his message would spread, and that was good. The more beings who understood the truth about humans, the fewer conflicts there would be. The fewer bodies piled up on asteroids and colony worlds. On Haven Colony, life had slowly returned to normal. The destroyed sections had been rebuilt. New colonists had arrived, drawn by stories of the battle and the promise of a place where humans stood their ground. The population had doubled, and there were plans for expansion. Jacob Pierce no longer lived on the colony. He had accepted the commission in the Colonial Defense Force, and now trained other settlements in defensive tactics, teaching them what he and Kate had learned the hard way: how to turn a civilian colony into a fortress, how to make attacking humans too expensive to be worth it. Kate Morrison had stayed on Haven Colony, becoming its official administrator. She oversaw the rebuilding and the expansion. She also maintained the memorial to the 23 people who had died defending their home. Every new colonist was required to visit the memorial and learn the names of those who had paid the price for Haven Colony's independence. One evening, Kate stood in the rebuilt command center, looking at a communication from Jacob. He was visiting a new colony on the frontier, teaching them his methods. The message was simple but carried weight. "The galaxy is learning," Jacob had written. "Slowly, but they are learning. Attacks on human colonies have dropped by 70%, not because we got stronger, but because we proved we would fight. Word has spread. And now, instead of seeing humans as easy targets, most species see us as more trouble than we are worth. That is the legacy of Haven Colony. That is what your people died for." Kate saved the message and walked to the memorial chamber. She did this every evening, a personal ritual. She read the names carved into stone: Chris Baker, Linda Hayes, Paul Martinez. 20 more names. 23 people who had refused to run, who had fought and died so that humans could live in space without fear. "We did it," she whispered to the stones. "The galaxy knows now. They know that humans do not break. They know that attacking us costs too much. You did not die for nothing. You changed everything." Back on Nexus Station, a message began broadcasting on all Mercenary channels. It was Zixthor himself, his massive form filling the screen, his voice carrying the weight of experience and warning. "I am Zixthor of the Krellian clans. For 20 years I never failed a contract. I fought Vrax predators. I hunted Kralix warriors. I survived battles that would kill most beings. But 1 year ago I failed. I failed because I underestimated humans. Because I thought Class 3 meant weak. Because I did not understand what makes them truly dangerous." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Humans are not the strongest species. They are not the fastest or the most advanced, but they have something that makes them more dangerous than any predator in the galaxy. They refuse to lose. They will fight when fighting is suicide. They will sacrifice themselves just to take you down with them. They will turn their homes into death traps and their bodies into weapons. I lost 6 of my team at Haven Colony. 6 professionals killed by miners and engineers, and I consider myself lucky. Lucky because I retreated. Lucky because I recognized the truth before it was too late. Lucky because I survived to tell you this warning." Zixthor leaned closer to the camera, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "So I am telling you. I am begging you. Never make humans angry. Never threaten their homes. Never think you can push them around because they are Class 3. Because once you make them angry, once you start that fight, there is no good outcome. Either you win but pay such a terrible price that winning feels like losing, or they kill you. Those are your only options. Leave humans alone. Trade with them. Work with them. Even befriend them if you can. But never ever make them angry, because angry humans are the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy, not because of what they can do, but because of what they are willing to do." The broadcast ended. In bars and ships across the galaxy, mercenaries watched and listened. Some scoffed, others nodded slowly, understanding. A few deleted human contracts from their files, deciding the money was not worth the risk. The young Kresh warrior watched the broadcast in his ship, preparing to travel to his first human contract. He sneered at the screen. "Coward, I will show them all. I will succeed where Zixthor failed." But deep in his mind, a small voice whispered doubt. What if the old Silurian was right? What if Zixthor was telling the truth? What if humans really were that dangerous? He pushed the doubts away and set course for the human colony. He would learn soon enough. Some lessons had to be taught the hard way. On Earth, in the Colonial Administration headquarters, officials gathered,